Okay, Satnam, good morning. I will say to you what the Master said on Equinox in 1991. Let us, well, actually, no, that's another thing you said on Equinox, 1991. I'll read to you this. Today is the most important day in every human's life. It's the equinox. So, welcome to the party. As my friend who is my bandmate and producer on our Rama Records tracks, he has a song called "It's All Too Human, Baby," and it's funny. Just recently, I had posted something on Instagram, and someone hashtagged "It's All Too Human, Baby," and I was like, somebody knew from the days of yore. But so this is a very important day. Yogi Bhajan, when he first got here and began to give the teachings of Kundalini Yoga and humanology and eventually white tantric yoga, he said that if you align your life with these equinoxes and the solstices, and you align kind of your whole time grid with these angles of the sun to the earth, then it's a propulsion mechanism. And I felt it right away this morning. I felt some of the pressure and some of the kind of mercurial retrograde and some of the eclipse kind of energy, all of that, there's a bit of a relief because there's an angle today, there's an opening, there's a portal to propel yourself in the right direction if you have the technology. And when he was giving this lecture, he said, look, not everybody wants to meditate or even is supposed to. It's, many people will not find their meditation practice. They will not find something deeper than kind of just the surface life. And that's part of whatever kind of samskaras and kind of karmas that they're living in. However, if you're in this room this morning, you have found it. And the kind of way that we alchemize the karmic patterns into Dharma is one of the secrets are these angles. And these angles help because you think we have these kind of wheels of patterns and cycles that go throughout lifetimes and throughout incarnations. You would be surprised how many. Maybe some of you wouldn't, but some of you would be very surprised and maybe a little, unimpressed how many lifetimes you've spent going through the hamster wheel of these samskaras. And so we have a very powerful opportunity because these angles, and not just the angles of equinox, but on the equinox and the solstice, you get a massive kind of momentum behind you. We have this opportunity to cut through the cycle, the wheel at a certain angle through this kind of X, Z, tantric configuration. And so what that does is think about, wheels turning, stick something at an angle into a wheel, and all of a sudden, wheel stops. You get that? Is it called a cog? No, that's something else. It's a good word though. But so you stick some sort of let's just say I'm just like having the image of children playing and like the wheels are turning, and then you stick something in to the momentum, and if you come at the right angle, it will totally stop. And that's basically the opportunity we have on an equinox day. That's how big it is. That's why it's the most important day of your life. Welcome. Because you can do major psychic surgery on days like this. And we have 4 out of the whole year. And I thought it was interesting. He says equinox is the most important day of our lives, not solstice. And I was just meditating on that this morning. Like, what is it about the equinoxes particularly? Do you have anything on that, Abhinjot?
I find that balance at this time is
Yeah, I think this is one of the first times that I've always been a bit partial to the solstices, and because of the cosmic workings this month and the kind of build up to this equinox, I personally, in my personal experience, have had a really profound, my most profound experience with this kind of fall equinox energy. So I transcribed a meditation that Yogi Bhajan gave not only on an equinox, but also an equinox during a Mercury retrograde. And I thought, and I thought that this would be an interesting experiment. And we're going to launch this Interstellar Star School. I got a bunch on this, Liv Chudden. You're going to have so much fun. On my meditations this morning. So we're going to launch this Interstellar Star School, and the whole idea being something like we're doing today is Yogi Bhajan, he says in this, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, because if you're either doing teacher training this year, which I highly recommend doing, whether you've done it before or not, starts October 2nd, or you just want to go deeper in your practice by doing teacher training this year, the way that we worked with this a little bit over the Women's Weekend, and it was really quite profound. I wanted to share my personal practice and how I connect with the teachings, just as a window in. Everyone has their own particular connection. But one of the things that I do, and Tej does this as well, I'm sure Mundev does this, because Mundev does most of the write-ups for Hadi Jivan now, is, we watch the thing over and over again. I read it, I watch it, I listen to it. They're different faculties for me. I'm very visual, so I get a lot from, and because I have a photographic memory, one of the things I like to do is I read teachings, and then if I have the video, I'll go back and listen to it, and the experience I get from that. So for those of you who are visual, I'm just offering this as a tool to go deeper in your own practice. For those of you who are visual, like I am, once I've read it, then I go and listen to it and I watch him, and I feel like I somehow am having an incarnational remembrance, which is true on some level, but it's a way that I also kind of trick myself into that experience. It's like, oh God, I already know this. I heard this somewhere. It's like I already read the lecture. But it's a way to embody, like to go deeper with let the teachings resonate somehow, because they're very, the way that they kind of open up in different ways. And we have to understand, and this is what we're creating here in Venice and eventually wherever the university is supposed to be, is I really want you guys to be incredible students. Yogi Bhajan said something in this video this morning that I was just like, ah. Oh. He said, I may not be the most amazing man on this earth, but I am an amazing student. And the way he said it was just so beautiful. And I want you guys to be amazing students. That's my greatest wish. And then what I know that translates into is great leaders and great teachers. And so yeah, I go and I read this stuff. So I'd been reading it for the past couple of days, and I've been sharing some of the things he says. And, he talks a lot about this kind of tomfoolery of, I'm really happy I got to say that word, on Rama TV, 140 countries, tomfoolery going out to you. So our kind of the way that we relate with the cosmic, the energy of the cosmos and nature is so denatured. And so it's like the way that somebody came up to me a couple of days ago and was like, I heard you talking about aliens. And then I met Moby, and I know you got in a Twitter fight with Moby. And I was like, really? Because I don't know how to go on Twitter. It was on Instagram, girl. Get your facts straight. And she was like, Moby calls himself an alien. What do you think about that? It was almost exactly, I was like, okay, I'm being, I felt like she was, and so we had a little light alien. But I just said to her, I was like, look, it's ridiculous to think that we are the only life in the universe. It's absolute insanity. It's tomfoolery. And the same thing with this cosmic kind of relationship, and this is what Yogi Bhajan talks about in this Equinox lecture, is he's like, it's just everybody wants to be like, oh, the sun flares, and oh, Mercury retrograde, and kind of like poo-poo, although this was a different time. People actually now use it in a different way, which is like as an excuse. I saw something this morning, which is like, some ridiculous animal picture saying, I'm sorry for what I said during Mercury retrograde. So now we use it as just an excuse for, more bad human behavior. Just leave it to us, anything we can do to use it as an excuse. But however we're using it, we're not relating to it properly. And so there's a denaturing in the relationship to these kind of cosmic cycles. Our own cycles is the same thing. Our fear of aging and our fear of death and our fear of everything, basically, besides what, happened yesterday, but we didn't like that either. So our fear of everything, that's the only thing that is, real, kind of. But we didn't like it, but it's real, so we can at least trust it. Not really. So, you can see how the whole thing is a collective mental illness. I think that's a great way of putting it, as Eckhart Tolle puts it. And so that our relationship with these kind of cosmic pulses is totally off, and our relationship with our own natural cycles is totally off, and that's the kind of aging, death, fear, and everything that, we spend most of our lives running away from. And we live in a city where a lot of people are making a lot of money off of everyone's fear of death and aging. And then, so everyone has, the same face. I thought that was, whose idea was that? That just makes everyone more afraid. And that just, which is part of the reason why it's happening. But so this whole kind of, so we live in this city particularly has a very high subconscious fear about cycles. And there's no empowerment. There's no dignity. And the same thing with our relationship with the cosmic cycles. And so he says in this Mercury retrograde, when it's in retrograde, it's 170 times more difficult to communicate. I find something that is interesting is that it's actually an interesting time to communicate things that have been difficult to communicate or have been difficult to do. It's actually a good time to revisit because the difficulty was already difficult, so something about the difficulty that was already difficult makes it somewhat easier. So, you have to have a relationship with these cycles, else you would never be able to, even kind of get close to what that might mean for you or how you can use the energy appropriately. And so he spoke at length about this. The other thing he spoke about, which of course was my favorite thing in the world, was he said, I came to Canada, then to Hollywood. And I was, teaching all these kind of whacked out Hollywood types, and West Hollywood. He was living in West Hollywood, so he said, it was that whole culture, we'll just say. And so he was in the midst of all of that, and then he started getting invited to yoga festivals or festivals, Woodstock and the like. And so he said that he was at a festival, it was post-Woodstock, but he was at a festival, and there was a body of water of some sort, either a lake or a river, and he said that, everybody was like a little beached whale, naked on the, and when they were hot, they went in the water, and when they were cold, they, beached out on the thing, and they thought that was freedom. And he said then those people, those kids, turned into his students. And everybody got all, dressed up and got some, good rings and some bana and a chuni and a thing and a thing. And now 20 years later, because this was given in 1991. And then those festivals were happening in 1971. He said, and now 20 years later, we are no different. We're just wearing different clothes. And the thing about Yogi Bhajan and his teachings is that this is one teeny little in the whole hour and a half So if you weren't paying attention or you're thinking about something else, or you missed what this profound teaching, which is you can put a bana on it and you're no different. You were physically weak 20 years ago and now we're mentally weak. And it doesn't matter what you're wearing, it doesn't matter what you're doing. That's spiritual materialism. He didn't call it that, but he was calling the sun get out. And this was part of the whole kind of heartbreak, but also part of his mission was to give teachings to people who weren't ready for them and to get them recorded so that they could be used at a later time for people who are ready for them. So are we ready for them? Okay. Because now it's 20 years later. Is it 20 years later? More than 20 years. And now it's 25 years later. So this is the time he gave these teachings for. And I'd like for us, no matter, and this is why we don't care where you've been, we don't care what you look like, we don't care how you dress, we don't care about any of it. Because the only reason you would do anything like wear white or do your sadhana is if it's going to give you yourself. And this meditation we're going to do and the work we're going to do today is about you giving you yourself. And on this day, profound things can happen. And maybe for the first time in many, many incarnations, you could actually meet yourself and then discover who that is, because we have no idea. Your personality and your little set of things that you do and don't do and what you like and don't like have nothing to do with who you are. So we would like for you to get the greatest gift that you've ever gotten. And so that's the opportunity today. Okay?